Hello, Eric Walczykowski here, CEO of Bespoke Partners and host of Tailored Talent. Today is one of my favorite shows. It's the half-year check-in and kind of seeing where things are, all things private equity, all things software. Today, I'm joined by Adam Boone, our Chief Commercial Officer. Boone, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. As always, it's awesome to be here. And I agree, this is one of my favorite shows that we do because it really is an amazing cross-section of what's going on in the industry.
So here we are. It was pretty amazing. I mean, I think halfway through the first half of the year, at the end of the first quarter, I think the Wall Street Journal came out and said AI is going to kill software, and is Bespoke Partners going to have a business, and all this other thing. Boone, is AI killing software?
Let me see. Not today. No. Let's be really, really clear. AI is not killing software. You know, this is one of a very long string of market disruptions that has indeed changed software, but software has not gone away. You know, looking back decades, every few years this happens. Client server, right? Client server innovation, virtualization, and mobile compute, and SaaS, right? SaaS itself was supposed to kill software. None of those killed software, right? They changed it. They changed what it required to be successful in it, but they did not kill the sector.
Yeah, look, and I think as we're seeing, I think this is just the next evolution. And I think as technology has gotten better and better and better, these S curves of adoption and disruption are coming faster and faster. And I think AI is going to be the fastest one yet. And when you think about it, you know, I think, you know, we're tracking thousands of software companies. And the idea with these software companies is they do have to evolve and change. And they do have to look at AI and how AI improves their product suite, how it improves data analytics within the software. But in fact, AI is not eating software.
That's right. In fact, you know, you could look at the other way around, that software, as Mark Andreessen said, will eat the world, is eating the world, and ultimately AI is accelerating that, right? AI is setting the table, as I like to say it. But yeah, you nailed it. You know, in fact, for a couple of years now, the companies we work with, the software and SaaS companies that are backed by private equity, have actually been in the midst of this transformation and figuring out how to adapt AI and bake it into their products and also into their operations and improve efficiencies. This has been well underway for a while. When the public market suddenly got, you know, AI fear and the SaaS apocalypse hit, you know, there were already many companies who were well down the path of transforming with AI.
No, fantastic. Well, look, I mean, I had the opportunity to do a session with Ethan Mollick about a year and a half ago. And, you know, he put out a really important model, which is AI is being used to disrupt industries, and it's also being used to make businesses more efficient. Now, I think what we're seeing by and large is people have turned on enterprise versions of agentic AI, whether it be ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and really empowering their professionals to make the business more efficient. But I do think actually the software companies need to, and the companies we're working with are taking a very hard look at their product stack and how they can embed AI in their product stack to disrupt themselves, which is candidly what you and I, who've been old enough to see a number of tech cycles, that's what you have to do.
1,000%. That's absolutely the case. In fact, last week, our friends at Vista Equity Partners, one of the greatest private equity firms for software out there, one of our clients that we worked with for many years, published a fascinating white paper that outlined how the companies in their portfolio, software companies, are adopting AI and using it to do exactly what you just described. And they reported that 100% of their portfolio companies now have implemented AI for internal efficiencies. So really that operational aspect of it that improves efficiency and productivity. And around a little over half, I think they said, of their portfolio had it actually baked it into their products. In other words, they'd rebuilt their product suites, their offerings to market really to be AI first and built around AI and agentic AI. And they outlined a bunch of different ways, fantastic examples of exactly how that was changing both the economics for their customers, but also for them internally in terms of their cost basis.
No, absolutely. So I think it's fair to say AI is here. Our clients are actually using AI in productive ways, not only to make their businesses more efficient, but disrupt their current software offerings. Beyond, you know, how they're using it, how are PE firms getting it wrong? I mean, one of my favorite ways is, well, we got to have a chief AI officer. So let's unpack that a little bit. Do we need a chief AI officer?
Ryan Bonner, head of our product and tech practice, I think he came out with this going on 2 years ago, where he said, look, folks, do you need a chief electricity officer? Probably not in this day and age, because everybody knows you got to use electricity in every aspect of the business. Same's true of AI, right? It needs to be baked into the functions. It needs to be used by every functional leader. Even more so, every functional leader needs to be thoughtful and strategic in how it's going to transform everything they do and how their employees work, how their teams work, and every aspect of how that affects what they sell to customers and how they sell it. So that is really the benchmark today.
And well, you know what's funny about that chief AI role is I first heard of it, and I think it was invented by one of our competitors that tries to seed the market because that's all they do is product and technology. And so they come up with a really cool role, but as non-operators, like you and I are operators, you got to embed that across the industry. You can't create someone with a little fancy title on an island and say, hey, we're going to create AI. They also started another rumor recently around, well, the CEO of the future comes up through the product suite only. Well, Boone, I mean, our CEO practice did nearly 100 CEO searches in private equity software, 50 million to 500 million. What does the data say about CEOs being a former product officer?
Yeah, Eric, we a year or so ago saw or heard that rumor, saw that some sponsors were kind of interested in that sort of product pathing for the CEO to, and that was going to become the norm. And part of what was driving that was the idea that, okay, if you come out of the product world, then you're going to be better at product innovation and adapting AI and baking it into your products to market. And I'll just say it was nothing more than a rumor. It did not come to pass.
For sure. And look, that's not to say that the product role is not a viable path to the CEO chair, but the numbers don't suggest we're seeing any more product CEOs than we've ever seen. In fact, our private equity firms demand the top 1% of PE CEO athletes that understand the totality of the business, most important vector typically being how to grow in a cost-efficient manner. And those CEOs, what we see time and time again, they also know how to manage the product suite and bring folks in. And so I think, that was an interesting one. But Boone, how else are PE firms getting it wrong?
Yeah, a lot of them where they get it wrong, and this is not many of our clients that we work with, but what we see and what we've experienced, and sometimes when we've been brought in to do changeouts of management teams, is they really get caught up in the first stage, if you will, of AI implementation. So McKinsey actually does an incredible job of mapping out the 3 horizons of AI. And give me a second to kind of lay that out because it's important to understanding the leadership component of this. So number 1 is just AI enablement. And that is where you make, ChatGPT or Claude or some other AI tool available and give employees permission to use it, right, as part of their jobs. That's really the most basic step. The next step is where you take your existing workflows and you figure out how to automate them with AI. So this might be introducing some level of agentic AI and streamlining that workflow, automating key steps like the administrative rote steps that happen in it. That's phase 2. That's the next level of maturity. The final level of maturity is really redesigning your business around AI, meaning you take those fundamental capabilities that AI brings to the table and you rethink products, you rethink how products are built, you rethink how products are brought to market and sold and monetized and supported, all the way around. It means transforming the business. And what we've seen be a problem for some of the software companies out there is they get stuck at number 1. They get stuck at giving tools to the employees and they think, okay, we've done it. We've, brought AI into the company and it's working now. But in reality, that is not true maturity. And in some cases, worst cases, it becomes AI theater, meaning you create this beautiful picture that you're using AI, but in reality, it's not. It's really no better than using other, slightly better software tools of the past.
No doubt. And what's fascinating about this and one of the roles that has come under scrutiny and I think is really critical in advancing AI and getting beyond AI theater, or that first step of making AI available, is the chief information officer or the chief technology officer, because in reality, their role is changing. And it's changed from the technology industry that you and I grew up in, where the CIO or the CTO weighed in on, hey, this is our tech stack. This is the technology we're going to use across the enterprise, and this is how you're going to use it, is changing from that to, wow, AI is available. People can actually vibe code and write things themselves. And so it's a sensing function to see how people are using AI so they can move to that second phase of implementing processes and rolling that across the company. In fact, I know you've written code and I'm not surprised, but shoot, I've written code. I've spent a couple of weekends writing interesting apps that I thought were interesting. And I think really having a CIO in the organization that makes sure we have a security wrapper around it,
yes,
but then also does sensing so they earn the trust of the organization and they can then look at that sensing and make whatever people are vibe coding into an enterprise application.
Yes, absolutely. So the CIO in that context, the CTO in that context, they are kind of bridging or moving and blending into what are true operational type functions in evaluating how you improve the operations themselves. It evolves that remit from being around tools and digitization and sort of the foundational components of IT into truly understanding what needs to be done work-wise and how you get there and how AI fits into that. The most advanced level, like I was describing earlier, of where this really is an unlock for the business is when you move into agentic AI workflows. And there, just you need to rethink what the workforce means in that context. The workforce of humans then can be working with what they're calling this AI agentic fleet or virtual workforce, and it becomes a blended workforce. And the decisions become what tasks get managed by the AI side and what tasks remain with the humans. And that becomes sort of the way that the AI gets implemented, and the CIO and CTO become much more strategic to that part of the business.
No doubt. And so I think as we look at it, we talked a little bit about what the PE firms have gotten wrong, but we've been on the front lines the entire time helping the evolution of management teams. And I think that evolution is so important, starting with an assessment guide that you put together early on to determine whether or not a particular management team is AI ready. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this actually began over 2 years ago for us when we started getting inquiries about. I mean, we had already been using AI ourselves for our internal processes and also in building out a very rich database on all the executives who are out there that could help solve our client searches. And we started getting inquiries from our clients about how they should be looking at leadership and how that leadership can help transform and help their companies to adopt AI. And I'll tell you. Just last week, we passed 200 executives that we have placed with a primary mandate for AI, meaning they're either a chief technology officer or a CIO who's responsible for implementing AI in the enterprise, or they're in some other function with a primary remit of AI transformation for that function. And we've had these now across every function, from finance to go-to-market, of course, product and tech, HR, you name it. And so just last week, we passed our 200th placement in an AI function. But backing up for a second, what we've done is with that experience and what we understand from those placements over the past 2 years, we have built out an AI assessment guide that addresses the primary ways you probe if you're looking to do that AI transformation in your portfolio. So our guide for sponsors literally gives you 50 some questions that you should be asking the leadership and the candidates that you're interviewing. We also have a CEO AI readiness guide that really guides a sponsor to pressure test their CEOs and see if the CEOs truly are adopting AI and implementing it in a way that's going to be successful, or whether they're just engaging in AI theater, right? It really helps them pierce that veil.
Well, and that assessment guide is so important because if you look at the history of search, you give me a scorecard, I'm going to look at who's in my Rolodex and see who fits it. If that doesn't work, and now I've actually got to start looking at resumes, the fail safe was, well, this person did it before. So in a particular CTO role, they transitioned from on-prem to the cloud. Okay, they did that 3 times. Or a CEO role, well, they took such and such enterprise software company from $50 to $100 million, check the box. The challenge we ran into is there's very few of us that have been leading with AI for a period of time. And I've shared many times, I started working with AI in the drug pharmaceutical space back in 2010 when we started using AI to index the drug industry. But there are not a lot of people that have been building businesses off of AI's back for a period of time. And so having that assessment guide is so important because you're not looking for, oh, this person did this before. You're looking for skills in there. Boone, tell me about some of those skills that you are looking for.
Oh, yeah. And this, by the way, we've now done kind of what I call sort of coaching presentations for a lot of clients to really help them think through how they approach this assessment. So you're exactly right. There is such a short track record of AI implementation that you cannot be, instantly pulling up a slate of candidates who have a decade of experience doing this, right? It just doesn't exist because that level of transformation has not been taking place. So there are a couple of ways that you use proxies and you probe for these things. And the chief way is just looking at their transformation track record. So as we talked about earlier, there have been lots of transformations that have taken place in software and SaaS in particular, but really all types of enterprises. And I'm talking technological transformations like digitization and records digitization and moving to cloud and adoption of SaaS and those sort of things, automated workflows. And you probe the individual executive's role in embracing and driving those changes. So you may do a deep dive on how they moved to cloud from prem, right, with some of their functions and data. And so you'll explore what was their specific role there, what was their personal stake in that, how did they tie that to their overall job success. Another very important aspect to be measuring is how did they translate the technical changes to business value, right? How did they show distinct business outcomes, measurable business outcomes from the technological change? Those sorts of metrics, those sorts of areas to probe are how you can tell if this person is going to also be able to do the same for AI.
No doubt. And so, we spend a lot of time focusing on the CEO, but in this world of AI, beyond the CEO, what are you seeing as the most next critical role?
Yeah, without a doubt, go-to-market is one, and of course, it's near and dear to my heart as a commercial officer. But go-to-market is one that has it's 100% proven that AI can absolutely ramp productivity, can absolutely improve close rates, can absolutely just juice your go-to-market processes across the board. And if you do not have a go-to-market leader who is not embracing and using AI every single day and getting their team to do the same, then you got the wrong leader. That is
fascinating. Even within go-to-market, as you look at RevOps, and if you've got the right data, AI can do wonders in terms of putting together the strategy and tactics to grow a business. And that RevOps role has really peaked within go-to-market, in particular this day of AI.
1000% it has. And I'll just say that when you're able to deploy it properly, RevOps, and deploy AI to accompany it properly, that is where you will see some of the quickest wins and the highest and the most tangible benefits, if you will, for AI deployment.
What other roles do you see as being key?
Yeah, finance. So CFOs and finance, we've seen a ton of interest and search assignments emerging with AI as a primary goal for a finance role. Now, it makes perfect sense because finance involves crunching an awful lot of numbers and modeling out very, very complex relationships between different departments and understanding the overall profile of the business and where it could go if you perform certain strategic moves, right? That's where finance reaches its highest and best value to the organization. AI is perfect for that in terms of being part of the tool set, part of the workflow, really part of the transformation that can take place within finance and make that even stronger. And so that's another area that we see an awful lot of interest. And again, high ROI, right? You can immediately start to see the value if you do it right in finance in deploying AI.
Well, and what's fascinating in private equity firms where efficiency is so important and being able to spend more time analyzing the data and developing strategy and tactics to go against that data, go-to-market and finance are ones that pop right up. And you can take a RevOps role, which historically has been Salesforce administration, making sure the data is correct, and turn it into a true strategic weapon. Very similar with FP&A, because if FP&A if you can run scenarios through AI, that FP&A leader can level up and really start providing higher level insights to the business. The other thing within that vein, and we've used it ourselves and even looked at it, is, if you think about M&A as a very key lever for private equity firms, the analysis that you can do in AI as it relates to M&A, whether it's understanding new markets, analyzing a set of financials, comparing that and integrating that into your own. I mean, being able to do revs on market models quicker and quicker and quicker just leads to more efficient M&A process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Corporate development is one of the areas, and whether that lives in your finance function or whether it's part of, the office of the CEO or what have you. But yes, the corporate development and understanding, potential for inorganic growth and how that can reshape the business, what that can look like in the longer term, and also what markets are most attractive for that sort of expansion. 1000% AI is beautiful in supporting that.
No doubt. And then, the final one I just want to touch on is product and technology. And I think it just goes without saying that the product and technology office suite is so important as we think about software companies and embedding AI into their product suite. And I personally think now more than ever that the separation of product and technology is so important, because what I've seen firsthand is by having a strong product function, a true market-based sensing product-based organization is going to help what's historically happened in the technology suite, which is, hey, this is the way we got to do it because of this, this, and this, versus really getting that sensing right and that healthy tension between product and technology. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yes, I 100% agree. One of the earliest areas of implementation for A was in the development stack. So it truly was in helping developers, right, to write code faster and expand their capacity and do complex coding much more quickly and efficiently. And that certainly, of course, got quite exciting in terms of engineering and overall capacity and development capacity. But where I think AI is really shining right now is in the market-facing aspects of building a product, and that is directly in the product management suite. That is where you're analyzing client data, you're analyzing customer behaviors, you're analyzing the patterns of purchasing and what moves the needle for them in terms of value. And that is, again, lots and lots of data, lots and lots of ways to collect the data. It can take humans a very long time to crunch through all those numbers and make sense of them. AI can do that almost instantaneously and then leave humans to really thinking through the strategy and examining other sort of intangible parts of the landscape that AI cannot analyze. So yes, building out a product function that has AI as a foundation is essential.
No doubt. So look, I mean, now that we've established that software is not going to die and that AI is just the next rev, Boone, what do you anticipate for the rest of the year? I mean, you and I are pretty close to the market, and this notion that software companies need to disrupt themselves has kind of already been baked into the market. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, values have corrected towards that end.
Yeah. I mean, there's still probably some pain to come as more headlines perhaps roll out with more noise about this. But at the end of the day, the market absolutely has already baked in pretty much the correction for this. Bain's mid-year report came out, and it said that technology deal value overall in private equity fell 70%. Driven by basically a lot of fear, a lot of concern over AI disrupting software. And at the same time, the public company software valuations dropped nearly 30% in the first quarter. And so that really is, that is the correction, I guess, if you will, that is baking in that risk, that concern about it. What's going on now are bargains and buying opportunities and companies that are going to be snapped up and brought into platforms and going to further drive some very interesting transformation in software. I'll just say also overall, we're having a banner year. Our own book of business is up 60% year over year. Hunt Scanlon just came out with a report a week or so ago where they said that across 100 search firms they surveyed, the average growth rate is 11%. We're doing 60%. A big part of this is because there's so much of this transformational leadership change that's going on, and we're really helping to drive that. But also just say in general, this is a sign of a very, very healthy sector. This is a sector that's growing. This is a sector that has more platforms coming online, and overall, we take this as a sign of continued growth and confidence in software and SaaS.
No doubt. So I think as we look at the remainder of the year, I think we're going to see more platform deals now that values have corrected. I think we're going to see big privates because there are a ton of bargain opportunities in the public markets right now. And I also do think we are going to see a handful more large companies that are turned over to the creditors, not so much necessarily because AI is killing software in the future, it's because they were over-levered.
Yes, that definitely is the case. PitchBook came out with a report that had some fantastic data on that precise issue as part of their coverage of the software sector. There were a number of companies that were acquired by private equity firms at the peak a couple of years ago when there was a huge influx of capital into the sector, but also they were perhaps over-levered, and now they have unsustainable debt service. And so, yes, I do anticipate there will be more of that that takes place. But overall, this is not a sector that's dying and not being killed.
No, absolutely. So, back to our niche, which is talent within private equity, talent within private equity software. I mean, the first thing that we're recommending to all of our private equity clients right now is assess your current leadership team against the ability to navigate the three phases of AI, making AI available, institutionalizing processes, and then using AI to disrupt your current stack. What other recommendations, Boone, do we have for our private equity firms and clients right now?
Yeah, one area that we often see them when they are, concerned about very critical leadership upgrades like this is they sometimes decide, we're going to handle this search internally. We're going to run this search using our own network because, it's very mission critical for us. And that is the exact opposite way you should go with a mission critical search like that. When you have a search, which is absolutely essential to the value creation plan and execution, you should be seeing the largest swath of the market that you possibly can. The only way to do that is to work with a firm that does this all day, every day. And of course, I want you to work with Bespoke. But whoever you work with, make sure it's a firm that gives you that market visibility that you can't achieve yourself. You mentioned it earlier, the notion that a firm may, any company that decides they're going to use their own Rolodex to try to solve a search, the best visibility they're going to get of the market is around 20%, meaning they'll only see about 20% of the available candidates out there. It's just a function of how networks work, right? And that bottom-up view of who knows who and how robust your network can be. We have mapped the market from the top down. And so now with a database in software and SaaS that tops 1 million executives, we're able to give our clients visibility into the complete market. That's visibility you cannot do without. If it truly is a mission critical hire, then you must have that visibility into the complete market and know all your options, including the step-ups, including the executives coming out of adjacent markets, right? All of that must be visible for you to do this right.
No, absolutely. So, to back up, assess the current leadership team, because each of these roles are mission critical. We've mapped the value anywhere from 50 million on the growth equity low end up to the $1 billion plus on the scale. And that's value per head or per role. And so it's so important that in today's tight market where everybody is assessing their current leadership team for the ability to transform using AI, you've got to have a full view of the market. And what's ironic about that is people that make the decision because of the small search fee for the 50 million to $1 billion exec, but yet they wouldn't do that when they're doing diligence on a company. They want to understand the whole market. And that's why that market mapping top down, we're the only firm that has the top down view. And then you couple that with our recruiters are on the phone all day, every day, getting proprietary market knowledge with executives. You think about the average membership is 100 people per search. Our conversion rate is 82%. So the number of number of executives our recruiters are talking to every day, it's just unparalleled insight to what's going on in the talent market. And so assess, which everybody's doing, make sure you map the market. And then the final thing for us is running a very tight and efficient process. Now is not the time to have extended, drawn out, not understanding what the end looks like in terms of a search or recruiting process. And so we're spending a significant amount of time right now making sure we get the scorecard right from the get-go, that we're doubling down on what market comp looks like from the get-go so that there is a match between the scorecard and actually the executives that we're able to attract with that scorecard. And then on the search, making sure that the search process is very tight because it's a seller's market right now. The candidates that we're talking to have multiple opportunities. They're getting multiple calls a week on this. So making sure that you have a tight process and back to the right search firm that actually takes the call. 82% of the time we're getting that candidate on the phone call to consider the opportunity. It's such an important piece in today's market. And so I really think that assessment, market mapping, and then running a tight process so that we can get to the end is really important as we round out the year.
You cannot overemphasize the importance of that tight process side of things. We pride ourselves on a days to close for our process, which is well less than half of the industry average. And now with our executive index, it's often below 60 days, 70 days to land in a C-suite executive, a highly qualified C-suite executive. But your point is absolutely spot on. We ran the calculations a while ago, and if you take the typical search firms' days to close, meaning their end-to-end process of around 160 days, what you're doing is dramatically delaying getting that person in seat, which in turn delays execution on the value creation plan, which in turn means either you're going to have to lengthen your hold period if you want to get full value for what that person can contribute, or you're going to get some cut in the amount of total valuation that they will be able to support and provide at the end of the day. If you go with the full average length of a search, the days to close of a typical search firm, what it results in is approximately $12 million in EBITDA leakage during that startup period. That in turn equates to $135 million in lost exit value. So that's significant. And for a middle market firm, which those numbers are based on, that is a big chunk of value. So the point is, time is of the essence. You must have a crisp and very tight and very accurate process.
No doubt. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Boone, truly appreciate you hopping on today. It's been a great first half of the year, and I'm very excited to see what comes of the second half.
100%. It's going to be exciting, and I'm delighted to be on this ride.